Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is a segment from my Journey Series 152. I haven't uploaded yet to the my regular YouTube channel, which I've documented my spiritual journey in these things. And I was just wrapping up this origin story. The reason I started covering this, I started making these sort of down memory lane spiritual, interactions or spiritual things to do with my spiritual journey that were involved trips and gatherings and personal life stuff and interactions with the master of the system, Chargy, and then the dodgy debacle and these things. And it's been kind of a wild ride, and I had to delete the whole thing because of the copyright issues with dodgy and the freaking heartfulness. So I just redid the original, whatever it is, right? You guys who've listened to this know what I'm talking about. But then I started talking about the World Bank and the whole. I'd interact with this guy called the Dodgy Truther. He's a preceptor in India that has been active, trying to wake people up to dodgy being sucky. But there's about some thousands of people that are aware of it. Some of them are silent, some of them aren't. Majority of them are silent. But I was talking about the World Bank here and some other things to do with dodgy. At the end of I just kind of wrapped up the whole origin story, and I thought this was an audio worth a standalone video here. So let's get into it. Here's the audio. Okay, today is Thursday, June 27th. The reason I'm talking about this stuff with Dodgy is just to wrap up my the end of this sort of origin story stuff. Um, and then all the way that this played out. But, I just wrote to the Dodgy Truther about the whole thing with um, these kids saying, if you want to find out about the Brighter Minds scam, go to brighterminds.com or talk to any trainer. And now these preceptors are being used as, again, this has nothing to do with Sajmark. The Brighter Minds scam didn't come from Babaji. It's not anything to do with the organization. It's something that Dodgy got scammed into. He got, tricked by some kid or whatever. Maybe he just saw it as an opportunity. And they've created this for-profit business that was a known scam. I don't have to say this. I mean, I've said it a thousand times. So we all know what happened. But it doesn't have anything to do with the spiritual responsibilities of a preceptor. And these people all have, jobs and careers. And, if this thing goes, sideways in some way, it gets exposed as a scam. And they're all, complicit in this thing, right? And somebody coming to them and saying, can you tell me about this or whatever, or if they're pushing it, if some of them are putting it up on their social media. I mean, Bobby Ossies are putting some of these Brighter Minds thing up on social media, and so some people I'm sure are into it more than others, but they're also signing off on this by not speaking up or not calling it out for what it is, right? So it's just a real disaster, like in terms of the organization, which is already. I mean, there's nothing that can be done about it in terms of saving the organization. But people could speak up for what's right. And the fact that you don't see any of these people, at least I don't know of them. Like I know about the Dodgy Truthers group of people in India, and so there's some people out there that are posting on social media or whatever they're doing. But everybody else is, in terms of America, I don't know what I haven't heard of anybody saying anything, and I don't know if how people are talking about these in private conversation, but they must realize there's been a huge drop off from what what's Fraugy's doing compared to how Chargy was. The Dodgy Truther just wrote me back and he said, here, there was this post. Paji is not on the board of PM. I guess Paji is a cartoon character. Paji, that's his nickname for Dodgy. Paji is not on the board of Brighter Minds. There's no open, informed financial links between Heartfulness and SRCM and Brighter Minds, whereas SRCM is a trust, so needs no disclosure. And yet Paji is openly promoting the scam. Why? And then he sent me a link, and there's a conversation between this guy, Martin Razor, who is also known as Martha, and he was one of the people who volunteered for the thing. You know, he's a guy in charge of World Bank Southeast Asia, and this one other woman, Anna something, I can't pronounce her name, and they both talk about having Kamish Patel there. Um, and she posts some pictures of him and these things, and it was a great honor to invite to share this platform with all you all. Looking forward to continued engagement in many fields. Then Kamish writes back, thank you for warm welcome at World Bank and for the kind words. We are so glad to share heartfulness practices with your dedicated team. Together, we can create a positive impact in South Asia and beyond by building communities that as a foundation of peace, compassion, and inner strength. I look forward to our continued collaboration in this meaningful journey of transformation and unity. I don't think he even wrote that. Um, and so that's it. I think the Dodgy Truther might have posted something on this, but they erased the comment. I'm not sure. But either way, the Brighter Minds scam is like a real puzzle because it's a known scam. And Dodgy keeps on promoting it with no seemingly benefit to himself. I don't know if he's getting backdoor money, but I don't even know how much money they're even making. Like, he keeps on pushing it over and over again. I don't even think it's that successful. And there's no upside to it, right? Like, it's something you just, like all the other people who do the scam get in and get out. And that's how you do it. You do the scam, you get in and get out. But I think he's, too oblivious, or I think he's being protected, or, by his politician buddies. I mean, it's a known scam. It's different pushing it here in America. And it's something that's fraudulent, right? Um, they're pushing this idea of, some kind of, it's a school, like it's supposed to be an educational, something that's based in science, as they put it, school. And, they're defrauding people by, saying that it does things that it doesn't. And in America, it's one thing in India where there's all the corruption and things and whatever, but even in India, it got exposed and people stopped doing it. And so to come to America, it's just bad decision making. Like, it's horrible decision making. Anyways, I looked up the World Bank, and Dr. Vandana Shiva is how I found, there's something with PBS about how they reset, they're supposed to be giving farmers and poor people money, but they end up like taking their land and resettling them, right? And even PBS had an article, but this woman, Dr. Vandana Shiva, who's against the, Monsanto seeds and all these things, right? The effects on the farmers, talked about how they have hijacked the water in India. She has an article, World Bank, World Trade Organization, and Corporate Control Over Water by Vandana Shiva. And so there's a thing there about how the water is now being... Let me just go ahead and read it here. So this is World Bank, WTO, World Trade Organization, Corporate Control Over Water. Giant water projects have always benefited the powerful and dispossessed the weak. Even when built by government and paid for by public money, the beneficiaries have been construction companies, industry, and the large commercial farming interests. Donald Worcester has called this the contrived market of the state, the capitalist state working to facilitate the unlimited accumulation of private wealth. And then it says here, the policies of privatization imposed through the World Bank and the rules of trade liberalization being negotiated in the World Trade Organization under the General Agreement on Trade and Services are rules and conditionalities that create corporate states that usurp resources from the people for the meeting vital needs and put them in the hands of private corporations for making profits through the privatization of essential services. The World Bank, an instrument for corporate control over water, having created scarcity and pollution through the promotion of non-sustainable water use, the World Bank is now transferring the scarcity it has created into the market opportunity for water corporations. The World Bank estimates the potential water at $80 billion. So the World Bank, and then she has, it involves Monsanto, the biotech giant here. So this is from September 2001. She's written this, and there's just all these other posts about the things that she has to do with the World Bank, and she has been somebody who Dodgy invited to speak in one of his things where he's bringing all these people in. So you have this one doctor who is, an agriculturist, and Dodgy wants to be a forestry guy. And she's been protecting farmers and calling out Monsanto and the seed thing for whatever it is, right? And there's the PBS article, The World Bank Does More Harm Than Good. This is from 2015. And this talks about resettlement of people. But there's all these articles and things, right? And the World Bank is being associated with the IMF and some of these other organizations and the World Trade Organization, like all these things. And, they're saying that they're there to help these people, but they're actually hurting them. And for Fraudgy to be a part of that, right? Like it just shows, and then of course he's got running his own scam and the whole thing. It's just, it's just a nightmare for, but anyways, getting back to what I was saying um, yesterday about putting a positive spin. I'm going to put this in as a standalone video on my backup channel that used to be about the dodgy scam thing, and as well as in the Journey series. But what I was saying yesterday in the Journey series, how I had to defend Dodgy to my audience because he was doing stupid shit. He was doing the kind of stuff that Dodgy do, right? That Fraudy do. He just was wrong about everything, the way he handled COVID, and to people in the truth community. So I'd say he was not a truther. And I had practical experience of his divinity. I saw that he was made into the master. I had good experiences with him, my personal experiences with him as a preceptor, when he was being made the master. And he's when he was vibing off of Chargy, right? When Chargy was there and alive and Dodgy was doing well. I mean, he wasn't, maybe, who knows what some of his idiosyncratic things were, but we didn't know about them. In my interactions with him, and I saw him being made into the master. So I had practical experience of not only Chargy endorsing him, but the work that was done. I saw it. I was, with him at different, intervals through this whole process, and I saw it. And I could feel the energy shift, and I had all these experiences, right? Which I talked about in my last post, my last voiceover. And so I had that. So I knew he was made the legitimate master. But I couldn't reconcile his bad decision making, especially his anti-truther. He was always on the wrong side of things, like the UN and the World Bank and these things, right? And he just in fact, he's gone on a tour with the UN in France, and he did the Brighter Minds demonstration there, and these the education wing of the UN, which is the UNESCO, right? And that's how they got their hands into Saj Marg when Chargy was still alive. Chargy built the Lalaji Memorial Omega School, and he needed a accredited program, so he used the UNESCO program, which is very popular in India, the UN program, and then from that, a bunch of these, scumbags around Chargy pushed a connection with the UN. And I criticized that, and I told him why. I told him how it went against what Babaji had said, and why Babaji had a chance to join the UN, all these things. And so and these guys pushed back all that stuff that I've already talked about in the Journey series so far. And so when my viewers started to come to me and say, look, this guy, how can you say this guy's spiritual? Because he's wrong about everything. I reconciled it because I knew he was a legitimate master of the system, but I couldn't, get away from his stupidity and his bad decision making. And a lot of these things are just stupid decisions. Pushing the Brighter Minds scam is just a stupid decision, right? On every level, because eventually it's got to come back around. And there's groups of in America that you can report fraud to. I'm not going to bother doing that, but because it's not my problem. But it's it can be done, right? People could do it, and eventually it's going to come around and it's going to be exposed and embarrass him and the mission, and all kinds of bad things can happen from it. And so what I was saying yesterday was the only real, way to reconcile this for me is to say that this was supposed to happen. That Dodgy was, supposed to run the mission into the ground for whatever reason. Like it's just part of our story, part of the Sagemark story. And there's, some ways like Babaji connecting with Lalaji when Lalaji was in the brighter world and becoming his representative. Of course, there was no organization, there was no properties, there was no legality to the thing. Like if some person came up and said, some preceptor said Babaji has, Charji has made whatever it is, right? That this is a new representative because, Daji can't make a quality master, a successor that anybody should have faith in because, Daji's transmission ability and all these things. I mean, what has happened to him? He's fallen. He's disconnected from Charji by saying, that stupid thing about, on Charji's birthday in 2017 saying, boss, I have become greater than you. But the only way for me to rationalize this or saying something, this is part of a plan. God has a plan and Sajmarg is part of a plan. And this was going to happen. It was inevitable. There was no possible better person than Daji that wouldn't have faced the scrutiny and the mission might have been torn apart. I don't know what would have happened, right? It would have happened, a good person wouldn't have been able to follow Charji because of all the people that were involved, all the politics, all the grossness that had creeped into the organization. And all these people that are around Charji were horrible. Like I said, I can't, we don't know what would have happened if there was a different person, right? But in terms of the people that would have been able to stand up to these clowns that are, pushing, they're pushing for the degradation of the system, right? And the criminal activity and all these things. As something becomes bigger and the corruption and the, all the things that the bureaucracy in India, all the things that happen there. And so this was inevitable. And there has to be some way to bring it back from this, I don't know, on an organizational level. But in terms of Daji, there is, in the Indian tradition, stories about, and this is not just India, it's the world, higher developed souls that play villains, right? Of course, the story of, I've talked about Shishupal from the Mahabharata, who was a soul that was around Vishnu, Krishna. And Vishnu said, you could come down 10 times, come down to earth and incarnate 10 times as my enemy, as my friend, and 3 times as my enemy. And so Shishupal said, the soul that became Shishupal in the Mahabharata, he had already come down twice with Krishna, with Vishnu. And he was, Krishna's enemy in the Mahabharata. He was always insulting Krishna, but his mom loved Krishna. So Krishna said he said to Shishupal's mom, he'd allow him 100 insults. But on the 100th one, he'd cook him, right? He'd pulled out his disc. There's a great part from the TV show, and he goes, "Today is your day, Shishupal," right? Because he was on like 97. But this guy was a devotee of Vishnu, and he was around him, serving his work, right? And he was liberated by being killed, and that was it. But he played an enemy. He played a villain. And so, I believe I played a villain in a previous life. I was an Asura king. There are times that you have to embrace this role for whatever reason as a soul. And if you're doing it because it's instructed as a part of your development, and maybe that's the case for Daji. Maybe he's supposed to be this dope. He's a higher developed soul that is playing this role because it's a necessary role. Like, that's the best I could say about him. But for everybody else, there should be a condemnation of his behavior. And he's just stupid, and, he doesn't have the ability to make good decisions and see things clearly. He's just always on the wrong side of everything. And so, if that's the role he's supposed to play, that's between him and God and, the mission. Like, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And this is just what this is the role he was assigned, and he's doing the, work that's supposed to be done. But in terms of all the rest of us, on a human level, we have, eyes and critical thinking skills, at least some of us, and we can say, well, this is wrong, and all these preceptors and people, that go along with this, and they have to question it. Like he's just so far removed from how great Chargy was on every level. He's making all these bad decisions, and for them to go along with it just because culturally you don't challenge your guru, or because Chargy endorsed him or whatever it is, when he so obviously is running the mission into the ground and doing the wrong thing. And so, yeah, I just wanted to, add that part. There is some elements of this having deeper spiritual meaning, and like I can't see, what exactly this is in terms of its long-term effects and it's being part of a plan or not, and what Dodgy was agreed to do as a soul. But we do know that on a the material level, he sucks, and regardless of any spiritual work that was done on him and the endorsement from Chargy and Babaji, he has failed. Right? He's taken the mission and wrecked it. And this heartfulness debacle, and this stupid brighter mind scam, and then just and constantly undermining Chargy's credibility and his work. He was supposed to talk about how great Chargy was and celebrate Chargy. Instead, he's removed him and erased him from the mission. Okay, so I just want to wrap this one up here, and I'll continue on for the Journey series, and I'll post this on my other channel. I don't think there's much more to add. There's more details in the Journey series, but I mean, everybody kind of knows Dodgy sucks, and maybe don't know the ramifications of him sucking, which I'm kind of painfully aware, at least partially. I don't think anybody knows how bad it is. But like I said, hopefully there's a plan, and this is part of that plan, and there'll be a way that this can be reversed, and the Sajmarg method of transmission and cleaning will survive, like it had been predicted. It would be influential in the future, and hopefully that's the case. But anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramount definitely pointing from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.